So thank you everybody for joining me. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I have been doing family history research since 2019. And over the years, I have made many significant discoveries, but the one piece of evidence that would confirm all of my research was actually uh, factual, consistently kept eluding me. That is until Thanksgiving weekend of this year. My sister Monica, who's on the call in the blue shirt or turquoise, has been my greatest cheerleader and sometimes research partner over the past 5 years. And during Thanksgiving weekend, she challenged me to use a new search tool on familysearch.org. And that tool led me to the information that I needed to confirm many years of research by those who came before me and my own research. So that's my sister and I on the left when we did a trip to the Arkansas State Archives, and that below is inside the Arkansas State Archives. We are all descendants of the sons of Virginia and Perry Bailey. James W. Bailey, Commodore Perry Bailey, and Isaac G. Bailey. All of us are related in that way. And these are just some photos that I had, and I just put a couple of montages together. I'm happy to go back through any of these later and tell everybody who everybody is. In the interest of time, I didn't do that. These are more photos, some from, most all of these I received from Carol Arterberry, except for the one in the middle of the woman, black and white, with the sort of the ripped photo. That was a photo from Emory University. And again, I can say who all these people are at some later time. This is a more recent, this was from when my sister and I traveled to, Dumas and Arkansas City and, you know, Kelso and other spots. And we all took a trip to the Mound Cemetery in Arkansas City, which is where we believe some of our ancestors are buried there. So I'm going to make sure that I have everybody muted. Yep. Okay, great. Okay, now. So I wanted to just do a brief in memoriam because we have, certainly our ancestors have passed on, and some people who were able to join us in previous presentations are no longer here with us. So in this memoriam, I also would encourage you to just do some personal reflection in how you honor those in your own immediate family who may have transitioned, and certainly to hold a space of appreciation. I'm speaking for myself personally, appreciation and gladness for all who came before me. And it can be sometimes painful to do this research because you end up looking at documents that indicate that your ancestors or our ancestors were property of someone else. And so I hold space for some of the traumas that I can imagine they encountered, but also I hold gladness for the joys and the perseverance and the tenacity, because it was through that pathway that all of us now exist. So I'm going to play this brief chimes, and you can do your own reflection in that period. Now I want to share with you a video that my sister and I did for Ancestry.com. Many of you probably have seen this video. It's very short, it's 30 seconds.
Our ancestors had power, our ancestors had hope, and our ancestors had ambition. Born in 1847, formerly enslaved, started buying land, was in the House of Representatives. We didn't know our family was part of Black Reconstruction.
Exactly.
Seriously.
Finding out this family history, these things become anchors for your soul.
How did I get started? family history researchers who actually preceded me. It was in September of 2019 when I stumbled on this message below after searching Google for my second great grandfather, Commodore Perry Bailey. This message, which was on the Desha County Queries, sent me down a rabbit hole of genealogy. In just a few weeks, I actually ended up speaking to the poster of this message, my great cousin, Chris Eatman, on the phone.
And I never thought I would ever live to be in my 80s. I never thought so. But somehow I'm still here, although I'm kind of frail in health, but I'm still here with most of my mind, clear mind.
And when did you start doing this family history research?
Well, when did you see on
1979.
1979?
I think that's when you started going to the buildings, but in your mind.
Oh, in my mind, I was inspired to do this after so long and hearing that I wasn't going to amount to nothing, and I wanted to see what type of people I come from. I didn't know how to, because my folks wouldn't talk about nothing. And so after Alex Haley had done his research, supposedly, and the roots come out, I said, well, maybe I could do something like that too, to see who I'm from, what kind of people I was in my family. So I remember crying. I had pulled over by this cemetery, and I was just crying my heart out. I was so heartbroken because I didn't know who I was, what I was, and I wanted to amount to something. So I was just sitting there at the gate of this cemetery crying almost until the rain had stopped falling. And I cranked up my car and started on home. And I made up my mind I was going to find some way to look back and see who my family was. And that's what inspired me. So ever since then, I had been doing little research. And
other family researchers, several other family members, including Carol Arterberry, who's not in the picture, preceded my 2019 beginnings, and I want to honor them as well. In this 2023 photo, we have Jerry and Jackie Brown, Juanita Elliott, Christabel Eatman, younger, who we just heard from in her 80s, and Betty Sue Johnson and Ralph Jefferson. And I believe this photo was from 2003. And so what I discovered as I started on my journey, and really not that long ago in 2019, that for 45 years, different members of our family had been piecing and stitching together and trying to connect the dots to go back as far as we could in our family history lineage. And some information was handed down as oral history. And then I made that my real focus to try to verify, is that oral history accurate or not? And sometimes I found that the oral history was not as accurate, although it's made for good folklore.
And
where have I done my research? So I have done my research really all over the country and used the internet. Oh shoot, I forgot this thing is so sensitive, you can't touch it. So I've been to the Arkansas State Archives, the Virginia Union Library in Richmond. I've been to Emory University 5 times. I've been to Arkansas State Archives twice. I interviewed, as you see, I have many recordings of talking with cousin Christabel Eatman, and she was generous and extended to me pretty much everything that she had done that she still had in her possession. I used Ancestry.com. I've had my DNA done. I encouraged my oldest living aunt, well, not oldest, but the remaining living aunt on our Bailey side, to have her DNA done, Julia Johnson, which she did. I used extensively FamilySearch.org, and that was really where I found the latest research discovery came from, FamilySearch.org. I want to start with the enslavers, because when you do African American genealogy, you know, if your ancestors were not free people of color, then eventually you will have to go into the enslavers to try to go back farther than what we know as being 1870, which is the first census where all people, including the recently emancipated, formerly enslaved individuals, have their names on the census record. Although we will find, as later in my presentation, that we also have indication before 1870 of our ancestors' names. So prior to me making my discovery, the oral history was that our ancestors were enslaved by John R. Campbell and his sons, Charles W. Campbell and James B. Campbell. John R. Campbell was a wealthy slave owner originally from Pennsylvania who bought land in Virginia in 1815. He had a plantation there for 21 years. In 1835, he and his whole family traveled west from Virginia to buy land in Arkansas. Charles and the sons, Charles and James, traveled to Arkansas to be the managers of the plantation. They had a significant number of slaves to clear and work the land. And Charles Campbell built a house in Arkansas City, which you all know as Arkansas City, in 1838, a more grand house. They had smaller living accommodations prior to that. A man named Oscar Bowles was the first overseer I'm sorry, this thing is so tricky, was the first overseer for Charles W. Campbell. Our ancestors were among the first known settlers of the southeastern part of Arkansas. In fact, they, for all intents and purposes, they built Arkansas City as much as anyone. The enslaver, John R. Campbell, he dies in 1840 in Arkansas, just 5 years after he brings his family and his sort of entire enslaved population. He died with a will, but it took 17 years for his estate to move through the courts, and his assets and property were finally distributed in 1857. One of the things that people who are looking for their ancestors and their African-American descent, you're looking for, prior to emancipation or 1865, you're looking to see if there is a probate after someone dies. If they have a will, or even if they don't have a will, their assets have to be inventoried so that the assets can be distributed to whomever, if you have a will, to whomever it says in the will. And if you don't have a will, then many of those families ended up in court fighting for those assets. So I remember thinking, as I was doing this research, are the Campbells really the family? Am I researching the wrong white folks, quite honestly? After hours and hours and hours and drawing hypotheses and trying to connect various dots. And certainly cousin Christabel had done a lot of research, but she too could never find any kind of probate. We all knew that he had died in 1840, but we couldn't find any kind of inventory of his assets out of his will. And I was able later to find out why, because the family was fighting in court for 17 years. The recent discovery, what we've all showed up for today. And I'll go back in some of the history too beyond this. Oh, this is Lois. Lois just came in. What I knew before the discovery, before November 26th of this year, I knew that there were 4 children of Virginia and Perry Bailey, who are the oldest named ancestors that I have been able to pin down by name. There was James W. Bailey, Commodore Perry Bailey, Isaac G. Bailey, and Joel Winston Bailey. In fact, cousin Christabel had never found Joel Winston Bailey. So when I let her know that I had located Joel Winston Bailey, she was so excited. This was in 2022. And you heard her speaking earlier. During that visit, she told me that she was giving me everything and that I had to find more than she could find. She really put a lot of pressure on me and said, it's up to you. You have to do the rest of the work. And I took it to heart. I've got to find. So in 2022, finding Joel Winston Bailey was major, because that find led me to a couple of other very significant discoveries. In fact, let me explain how I found Joel Winston Bailey. Was actually across the Mississippi River in Bolivar County, Mississippi. So after they were emancipated, he, along with many other of our relatives and other enslaved people from the Campbell plantation, they crossed the Mississippi River and they settled really just a boat ride across the river. But James and Commodore and Isaac stayed on the Arkansas side or Arkansas City side, and they stayed there. I always wondered if the Campbells were actually the enslaver of our ancestors, as I said earlier. And if I also always wondered, did Virginia and Perry have more children? Could we find that out? Of course, quite frequently with enslavement, if there are girls or women, that is more difficult because obviously the census records were much more patriarchal in terms of how things were listed. I also wondered if our Perry Bailey ancestor was the brother of Frederick Douglass. That's a piece of folklore that still gets discussed and sort of passed around in the family circle. The first thing that I was able to find using the AI tool in Family Search, I'll never forget my sister standing right next to me to my right and saying, "Just give it a try." And I said, "Okay," but I was reluctant because I didn't want to not find anything. You know, you just get kind of tired. So what I found first of all was an 1854 enslaver probate report. The enslaver being John R. Campbell. So remember he dies in 1840. By 1854, 14 years later, the case had finally made its way through the courts, and there was a report created stating that the assets must be divided. And this was just a partial listing. So in this report, it's indicated that there were 55 Negro slaves. Now, to bring this to a greater detail, there were actually more enslaved people, but this was only the adults. And the very first name on this this sort of the thin sheet at the top, I highlighted a couple because the second name is Big Perry, and that is Perry Bailey. There's a name on here that I don't want to confuse you with the highlights because some of these were just for me, but the yellow highlighted Sanford is those of us who have Commodore as our common ancestor. That is Commodore's wife Anne's father. That's Sanford. We have in this the larger sheet where you see the first highlighted name says Big Jenny. That is Virginia Bailey. And there were many other names there. Oops, I forgot this thing is so tricky. I can't touch the mouse. There are many other names in this document. If anybody wants any of the documents, I can send you. And what the AI research tool does is also transcribes the documents. It's not 100% accurate. You still kind of go through it, but that was valuable because that Family Search, if you're not good at looking at these old cursive writing, it can strain your eyes. I've gotten pretty good at it, but it was helpful to have the transcription. The next thing I found was the mother lode or the big kahuna, the 1857 probate inventory. This was the document that I had been looking for 5 years. I just thought there was no way it could not exist. And this document basically divides all of the enslaved people up into 3 different groups because they were going to be distributed to 3 different members of John R. Campbell's family. This document connects the dots for all of the research and information I and others have gathered over the past 45 years. Why is it important? The probate inventory confirms the majority of the research done by me and the other family members from 1979 through today. It confirms unequivocally that our ancestors were enslaved by John R. Campbell and his sons, Charles and James. The inventory confirms that our Perry Bailey ancestor is not Frederick Douglass's brother, Perry Downs Bailey. The probate inventory confirms that the former plantation in Albemarle County, Virginia, owned by John R. Campbell, is where our ancestors were brought from in 1835 to come to Arkansas to build and work the Campbell plantation and create Arkansas City. The inventory further shows the sale of the plantation in Arkansas City It shows the division of the enslaved people, many who are our ancestors, between 3 Campbell family members in 1857. This is an actual advertisement of the 1857 sale of the Arkansas plantation, which was one of the primary assets of John R. Campbell that needed to be distributed. So what they did was sold the plantation and distributed the money amongst the 3 individuals, but the enslaved individuals were divided up into 3 groups, or what they call lots, and they were distributed to 3 different family members. Um, I'll just read a little bit out of this ad. It gives you some context of, what our ancestors endured. At this particular time, the plantation had 1,416 acres. It was a very large plantation. At this time, there were 30 head of mules, 5 mares, 4 horses, 4 colts, 4 yoke of oxen, 200 head of cattle, 230 sheep, 75 hogs, and all wagons, carts, farming utensils, etc., etc., etc. It was a mammoth undertaking. This is actually the transcription of that ad, and this is being recorded as well. So, and like I did before, the recordings are always a private link, so only if you have the link can you see if you want to go back and watch again. The distribution of the enslaved. The 1857 probate inventory is a distribution of the enslaved people that were part of John R. Campbell's personal property. There were 96 total enslaved people, and they were being divided into 3 groups or lots. Lot 1 was going to Mary E. Allen Campbell. She was the wife of John R. Campbell's deceased son, James. By this time, James was deceased. Lot 2 was going to Margaret Campbell. That was John R. Campbell's wife. And lot 3 was going to Charles W. Campbell, who was the other son of John R. Campbell. And I transcribed, this is the first page of the 1857. Well, I didn't transcribe it. I took it straight out of the Family Search transcription, but I did have to clean it up a little bit. It's a legal document. And so it basically talks about, cross bills and basically who was suing who to get their assets. I'll just drop to the bottom where it says, it is presented to the court a report in writing verified by affidavit setting forth inheritance that they did on the 26th day of March, 1857, appraise and divide the Negro slaves belonging to the estate of said John R. Campbell, deceased. Lot 1, I have highlighted some names. Lot 1, which went to Mary Campbell Sanford. I already knew that Sanford was the father of Commodore's wife, Anne. I already knew that, but I did not know those 3 brothers. Nick, Edward, the number 4 says Anne. That's Anne who married Commodore Perry Bailey. So that would be my second great grandmother and those who are my other comparable cousins. But I didn't know about Nick. I didn't know about Edward. I didn't know about Solomon. And then the second group of highlighted names, the female name there, Frances, that is Frances Bailey. Again, I did not know that she is the sibling of Commodore and James and Isaac Bailey. So I was able to find 3 more, and Joel, 3 more siblings, all women. These names are highlighted because Tom was her husband, and David, Eliza, and Roland were their children. That was from lot 1. Lot 2 is where we see Big Perry, Big Jenny. Let's skip Mary Jane and let's go right to Isaac. That's Isaac G. Bailey. Winston, that's Joel Winston Bailey. Now let's go back to the 2 daughters that we knew nothing about, Mary Jane and Kitty. So that's our first indication of a Mary Jane in the family. There are many family members who are named or middle named as Mary Jane, and that name has carried down forward. And then we'll skip down to the second block of yellow highlighted. So let's go to again the female on number 15. That's little Jenny. That would be the daughter of Big Jenny. So that is another sibling, Jenny Bailey, who married a man named Jeff, and those are their children, Matilda, little Beverly, Henderson, Nathan, Philip, and Henrietta. And then lot 3, which went to Charles W. Campbell, on number 27, we see Commodore Perry Bailey, indicated. Now, I was unable to isolate Jim. Jim is the only one I was unable to isolate, and I'm still going to be working on that because there were a couple of Jims in these 3 different lists. I'm not going to go to them all. There's a Jim Perry, there's a Jim Gary. And so what I discovered was if you weren't a known, a child below a certain age, you were not with your family group. So as we see Commodore, who we know was the son of Big Jim, Big Perry, and Big Jenny, but he's not listed next to them. And he's also not yet married. So he's listed here as a man. I just highlighted lot 2 a little bit larger. Somebody wanted to see the script. It's a little difficult to read, but that's lot 2 where most of our ancestors are. At least we have Big Perry, Big Jenny, Mary Jane, Isaac, Winston, and then Kitty. And then of course, little Jenny and her husband and their children. So I wanted to pause again for another moment of just reflection. I'm getting ready to have a questions moment at any moment. So you can open up your mics, but it can be very sobering to see these documents. Again, I have spent quite a few years, not as long years as some other people, being in this research. And it was such a pleasure to talk to cousin Juanita yesterday, because I was sharing with her that I had found her sister's obituary, and in the obituary it talks so much about how much she was into the family history, and I kept saying for years, oh man, I wish I could have met her. So it was just the best blessing to talk to Juanita yesterday. I felt like I was able to reach the sister who I couldn't speak to. So I just want to take another moment of in memoriam, an honoring moment, whatever it is that you want to do. Sometimes I cry, I might even cry today because it can become very emotional for me. So I just want to take another moment. So I framed this through my second great grandfather, because I wanted to divide it up in a way, of course, that I could make the most sense from. And so I just took this from Ancestry. So these are the siblings that I discovered in 2024. Jenny Bailey Lewis, because on the 1870 census, I can see she married the same man who was on the 1857 inventory. She marries him and they go by the name of Lewis. Frances Bailey marries the man from the 1857 inventory and they go by the last name Lynn. And Mary Jane Bailey and Kitty Bailey, I never was able to find either of them on the 1870, but we know that they are part of the family because they're on the 1857. So pretty much I was able to find 4 new siblings. Oh, there I go touching the thing. Can't touch the mouse. 4 new siblings, and it may be that there are more. These are the children of Virginia and Perry Bailey that I was able to confirm.
And
Now, questions. And then I'll have some more. And then if you have questions for the later stuff, if you don't want to stay, that's also fine. If anybody has a question, you can raise your hand, or I can see everybody. Diane, did you have your mic open? I think you're not muted.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I was just wondering, the children that you could not find, is it possible that they were sold and that may
Possible.
be the reason
You know
that
what?
you can't find them?
It's actually it's even, unfortunately, even more potentially complex than that. They could have been older. And remember, if you
Okay,
were older, you weren't next to your family lot. So they could
okay,
actually be on the document. I just don't know. Um,
okay,
I actually have researched almost every name, all 96 of them, and been able to find some who are not our relatives, but they were purchased from Tennessee. So I have been going slowly through all of the names, trying to see if I could, recapture any information by going back through the 1870 census as a start. That's a great question.
okay. And what about the home that you said that the of the got to quit the
Enslavers?
family that owned them in Arkansas City? Is
Yes.
that home still there? That plantation or that area
No,
still
it is
located
not.
there?
It
It's
is
okay.
not, but I have something for you, those of you who can stay, that I did research in the Library of Virginia, and I have a drawing of the house from Virginia, from the plantation in Virginia. Anyone else?
Just as a follow-up to that, Denise, so Diane was asking, she said not only is the house there, but is the plantation there? But when we
Yeah.
went there, I guess you could tell them what is there.
Well, it's really Arkansas City. I mean, to be kind of blunt, it is Arkansas City. The footprint of Arkansas City is pretty much the land where, and including Mound Cemetery, all of that. Um, I didn't include a little snapshot of the Arkansas side of the horseshoe system, but it's really the city in and of itself is where the majority of that land was.
Okay.
I was actually going to just make a really quick comment about that.
Mhm.
So the other thing that Denise discovered is the plantation in Virginia that the Campbells had was also in the bend of a river.
Same exact
Um,
footprint.
and it looks exactly the same as the bend of the river in Arkansas. So that in and of itself was fascinating and interesting. They almost looked for something that resembled exactly where they came from in Virginia in Arkansas.
Right. Anyone else?
Um,
Question?
Hi, Denise. Thank you so much for this amazing, um, just expression of love, for us here and for our ancestors. And I'm just, seeing this again, and my heart is racing, because I'm just so excited about what this means. And and I know we've talked about the names. I'm impressed that they are listed by name, one. Does that indicate anything about how the family perceived them, or why is that different? I mean, why
You
are
know, that's
some,
that's such a
yeah.
good question. I had similar thoughts as I was, first time looking at it and then continuing to look over it. And in a moment, I'm going to share the 1815 document that has Perry's name on it when he was actually purchased by John R. Campbell from Maryland to Virginia. He was one of the first that I can find because I have researched John R. Campbell's. I probably could tell his family who he is. I mean, it's ridiculous. But Perry seems to be one of the first enslaved individuals that John R. Campbell purchased. And so sort of that identity of Big Perry, I don't think it had anything to do with his size. I think that, in fact, on that list, the 96 enslaved people, Perry is the oldest male enslaved person on the list. He's 57 on that list. Big Jenny, his wife, Virginia, is the second oldest female among all 96 of the enslaved people. So perhaps they simply viewed them from the perspective of they'd had them the longest. And yeah, go
And the
ahead.
life expectancy of people around that time was, that was pretty 50s
Right.
was
Substantial.
what people, they normally passed away around that time. So the fact that that they had lived,
True.
And they have, did you mention there was also a birth date that they have recorded for him? Did I see that
Well,
incorrectly?
yeah, I'm going to, I'm not call it a birth date, but for African American folks, we tend to do, if you were formerly enslaved, they usually say about, because sometimes
Mhm.
those dates can, span about 4 years. You might get one that says 1798, and you get another one that says 1802, you get another one that says 1800. You're looking in sort of a span of years. Any, if there are no other questions, I'm going to go.
Denise,
Oh,
Denise, it's Carol. Hi.
Oh, hey.
Hi. Listen, I'm wondering then, how did the stories come down in each of our families about Frederick Douglass? I am almost
I love that
75,
question.
and I remember hearing this story from the time, I don't even remember how young,
I
but
don't
my
think it was
mother
a hard
always had,
story to get it to. I
yeah,
think that the name Bailey, number one, that is perhaps thought of as a less common name when it's actually not super uncommon. Um, so I can only imagine that it was a easy piece of folklore, family folklore to start, and for it to gain
but
length
how would
because
that information have gotten around? We don't have social
mm,
media. We don't, I mean,
people might
that
have
would have
wrote it in
taken a
letters.
very, huh?
People might have written it in letters.
That's true. Yeah.
Just the vast amount of letter writing
Mhm.
that were at Emory University. The Isaac G. Bailey papers are held there. I
Wow.
believe it's 40 boxes. It's a huge
Wow.
collection. I've been there 5 times. I've been
Wow.
through every single piece of material. I probably
Yeah.
know the material better than the archivist there
I'm
because I've been
sure.
through it
I'm
so
sure.
much. And what I found to be incredibly important and valuable is that nowhere in those papers, these are materials, letters, all the way back to, gosh, 18 I think the earliest letter is 1879, maybe even be a little bit
Mhm.
earlier than that, from Isaac G. Bailey to his wife and to other business individuals, to Oklahoma, to other important folks in the Baptist, because he was a minister. No mention
Right.
anywhere of Frederick Douglass anywhere.
Okay.
Not a
Well,
single mention. That was
it's
the
such a
first
r-
important clue for me
yeah,
that it might not be true, because
yeah.
something that important, they would have documented it. They would have,
Right.
elevated it in their materials that they were going to, preserve. So that was, as a researcher, that was the biggest clue for me, that it might not hold water. But then I did the rest of the research, which was to research Frederick Douglass's family, so that
Right.
I could make it actually quantifiable. And once I did
Well,
that
the
research, I'm thinking, oh, it's definitely not
the
true.
letter that came from the Douglas family, because Uncle Ralph had written him
I
them.
have it right
So
here.
what? Yeah. So
I
what
have the
did
whole
they say?
file right here.
I know. So I'm wondering then what they say was true, correct?
They actually say that it's not true. That is what the letter says, that it isn't true. I've gone through these. In fact, Carol was so generous and sent me these records, and I have been through them so many times. And
Mm.
it does say that it isn't true. And once I did, actually I had already done the Frederick Douglass research, but once
Yeah.
that, I understood how it wasn't true either. And now
Right.
finding this inventory, it absolutely reveals that basically Perry Bailey could not have been in Maryland and
Hmm.
Arkansas on an inventory
Right.
at the same time. Like it
Right.
just,
No, it is such a relief actually to finally, yeah, and I think that what spurred me on, way before AI, and I was just doing paper, and Uncle Ralph sort of took it on, along with Christabel. So um, it's just such a relief to know,
I
because it
know.
wasn't
I
about
feel the same
whether
way.
we were related or not. It was just knowing, are
Just
we?
knowing. Yeah.
Yeah, just knowing. So
Yeah, I
finally,
appreciate that, Carol. I really do. Gosh, I mean, I wrote to the Maryland State Archives, and then the most valuable item was the book by Samuel Douglas, who wrote a book that documents Perry Downs Bailey's history, which I was able to go and physically read at the Howard University Moreland Spingarn Archives, sit down, and not only was I able to read it, then I just screenshot all the pages because I wanted to have it for my own. And it basically spelled out the whole timeline, and it really paints the reality that it's not possible.
So the story really becomes,
A piece of folklore.
folklore, how it has been among African Americans
Right.
or among slaves, and how do you hold on to the story, whether it's true or not? You know,
Well,
it's
I think for me
fascinating.
that we have the same last name. What I can't say unequivocally is that perhaps there is, because like I said, I don't know who all those folks on that list might be, other children. It could be, we simply will never know quantifiably because
Right.
we can't find any documentation, but I can say we hold the same last name, and perhaps those Baileys from the Talbot and Maryland region have some connection.
Mm-hmm.
Just can't put it in black and white,
Right.
unfortunately.
Right. So where do you go from here?
Well, I have a part two, actually. So
Okay,
there's
well,
a
go
rest.
for it.
I think
We're
Juanita
ready.
and Tim had a yes.
You're on me. Oh,
You're ready.
sweetheart, I am so proud of you. We talked for so long yesterday. I am so impressed with all of the work that you've done. And it's so important that we continue to do this search and get our younger people ready to take the torch and move forward with it. Because we, with AI, we don't know what we might discover, later
No,
on.
this is so true.
So at this point, we're good because we are doing this for our family. I'm from the Isaac George branch of the family. Aunt Sue, his daughter, and
Yes. Yes. So
Jackie.
we have representation of all three of the first known brothers. The only brother we don't have representation for is Joel Winston. I've done a bit of research. I haven't been able to find their line yet, but I said, just give me a couple more months. I think I'll track them down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to go into part two, if that's okay.
Hey,
Okay.
Denise, my
Yes.
sisters are here. They just want to say hello to everybody real quick.
Hey,
Hi,
family.
Hey.
How are you? Nice to
So
see
when did we
you.
have dinner? Was that last year?
It was
last
spring. Was it
Yes.
it was
had
spring. It was like a
had a
big
lovely dinner. So everybody, I've been able to meet everybody in person that I keep finding. So Juanita is up next in that side of the family. I'm definitely, and Juanita is in Omaha for my Omaha folks. Isn't that unbelievable that she lives in? I said I'm born and raised in Omaha. So that was just so unbelievable that she's right where I was born and raised. So
Wow.
So part two, I'm going to jump into part two. I'm going to make it quick here. So our ancestors from Maryland to Virginia to Arkansas. Oh, let me get my little thing here. So in 1815, Perry Bailey was brought from Maryland to Virginia by John R. Campbell. In 1815, John R. Campbell registers what they called a certificate of importation in Virginia for 6 slaves to bring them from Maryland to Virginia. Perry is the second name on this list. And I transcribed it so you don't have to fiddle with all the script over there. Names of slaves brought into the state of Virginia from Maryland by the subscriber. Alice, a female, 35. Perry, a male, 17. David, a male, 15. Jim, a male, 16. Perry or Larry, 7 years of age. Jacob, or actually we said Perry, Barry, or Larry. And then Jacob, a male, 5 years of age. John R. Campbell. John R. Campbell personally appeared before me, John Watson, a justice of the peace for said county, and made oath that the above is a true list of the slaves brought into this commonwealth from the state of Maryland, that he did not bring them for the purpose of sale or with interest to evade the laws of this commonwealth to prevent the further importation of slaves or in any manner contrary to the provisions of this act given under my hand this 5th day of May, 1815. So this document puts Perry or an enslaved person named Perry, who would have been born anywhere between 1798 to 1802 in the possession of John R. Campbell. And if we think back to the 1857 inventory, Big Perry, who was 57, that would have meant he was born around 1800. So those dates all line up. How did our ancestors get to Arkansas, and where did they live once they arrived? They ended up on a plantation that the Campbells named Yellow Bend, although it also went by a couple of other names. So Virginia, 1815 to 1835. This is a picture of the house that John R. Campbell owned on the Virginia plantation. This document is housed at the Library of Virginia in Richmond. And I traveled there and spent a whole day researching there. And it was a one-story house on one side. The middle or pass-through piece was one story, and then on the other side it was a two-story. So it was a frame. It was a very, very large house for the time period. And the house was wood with shingles. It had a hall, a parlor, an office, tobacco houses, barns, and a couple of mills. The white little piece in the corner down there is it's a cutting from the 1815 insurance record for the mill. The mill was actually insured for $2,000 in 1815. That's a tremendous amount of money for 1815. And it says at the sort of in the middle, this house is not within 20 feet of any house. So it was saying that the grist mill, which they would do, they also had a sawmill, they would do wheat and other things, but that which was the only thing insured was not right next to the house that we actually see on the screen or the blueprint for the house. So that was one of the components by which they were going to insure the mill. What I found interesting when I visited the Library of Virginia, because I could look through all these insurance records, and I was, somewhat hopeful, but it didn't turn out to be the case. They often had drawings of the entire property on those insurance documents, including the enslaved homes and things like that. So I pulled a couple of those just for my own sort of archival interest, but unfortunately, John R. Campbell only insured the mill. This is the 1833 ad where John R. Campbell was selling the Virginia plantation. And this plantation, as I had mentioned earlier, for the 1857 inventory, that land was 1,400 acres. Well, the Virginia plantation was mammoth. It was huge. It was humongous. And in fact, he had two plantations divided by a river, just like similar, as my sister said earlier, just sort of like Arkansas was. I'll read just a little bit from the ad. This farm contains 1,100 acres of land, about 500 of which is cleared, and mostly in a high state of improvement. On this farm are about 250 to 275 acres of low grounds of very superior quality. This plantation is situated in a bend of the river as to require little fencing to enclose it. The improvements are of the very best kind: a very large and convenient dwelling house, recently finished kitchen, meat house, also a barn, 76 feet by 52, conveniently arranged with a basement story, stables, also a threshing machine, nearly new, tobacco houses, Negro quarters, and all other necessary outhouses. This is esteemed one of the most beautiful and healthy situations in the county. At the bottom, it talks about the mills. The mills are situated on the Rivanna River, which separate the two plantations. There are two burrs and grinds, annually 20 to 25,000 bushels of wheat. This is justly esteemed one of the best wheat sections in Virginia. The river has been recently improved and promises a permanent navigation at all seasons. Adjoining the manufacturing mill is a grist, plaster, and sawmill building anew. So that just gives you a sense of what our ancestors were encountering in Virginia before they left and were transported to Arkansas. And this was 1833. From Virginia to Arkansas City. This cutting is from a book. What is that book called? Goodspeed. What's the full name of it? Basically, it's a series of biographies of what they deemed important people in the various counties of Arkansas. And this is taken from Desha County. And this really is about Oscar Bowles, who was the overseer for the Campbells, but it mentions the Campbells. Oscar Bowles came to this county in 1835, making the trip in a flatboat from Virginia and landed where Arkansas City now stands, when there were but about 4 acres cleared and 1 log cabin. He brought with him the slaves belonging to John R. Campbell and was overseer for the last named gentleman and sons for 17 years. There were other similar improvements in this section of the county, and Mr. Bowles opened for Mr. Campbell the first farm in this part of the county. So in other words, our enslaved ancestors opened and built a farm and built the land and tilled the land and built the town and helped to create Arkansas City. I want to recontextualize that. And if you did this on a straight shot, you know, that's a 907-mile trip. And my sister and I spent quite a few hours trying to figure out which flatboat route they took, just because we were so curious. So more than likely, as it said in that previous, they traveled on a flatboat, or what they also called a bateau. It's French, so I don't speak French. I think it's bateau riverboat. And these are just some examples of what that might have looked like, what they were traveling on to go from Virginia to Arkansas. Arkansas, 1835 to 1865. The plantation our ancestors lived on was established in Desha County in that red circle. So pretty much that little bend, as we look at it, we kind of call it a horseshoe bend. It's very similar to the way in which the land was a horseshoe bend in Virginia, as my sister said earlier. This is a topography of current today. So you can really see how the Mississippi River makes that little horseshoe looking shape to it. And Arkansas City is right there. So I think it was Rebecca, asked this. So no, it was Diane. So pretty much the plantation for John R. Campbell and our ancestors was right here on the inside of the Mississippi River. And so here's another little anecdote from the Goodspeed book. After leaving the employ of Mr. Campbell, Mr. Bowles and Charles Campbell, that was John R.'s son, purchased a farm of land from a Mr. Johnson, one of the early settlers, and immediately engaged in cultivating, etc. During the war, which would be the Civil War, Mr. Bowles moved his and Campbell's Negroes back onto Crooked Bayou, where they remained for 1 year. And then Mr. Campbell took his Negroes to Texas. This was a common practice where, you know, Arkansas was determined to not concede. And so many of those enslavers took their enslaved people to Texas to try to evade and, you know, avoid the Union Army from taking possession. Again, historic anecdote of what our ancestors encountered and lived through and persevered through. And so Crook Bayou wasn't, initially they moved them out of Arkansas City about really just almost 5 miles away. But then Mr. Campbell ended up taking them to Texas. After emancipation, 1865, emancipation and beyond. Now here, I want to mention that most frequently, as I said earlier, you won't find the name of formerly enslaved individuals until 1870. However, we have five or six indicators before 1870 where we see our ancestors' names in print. The first is the 1866 marriage certificate between Commodore Perry Bailey and Anne Bowman. It's May 14th, 1866. And I just transcribed it here. This is to certify that I, John Dickerson, duly authorized and regularly acting minister of the gospel in connection with the Methodist Episcopal Church South, did on the 14th day of May, 1866, duly join in marriage Commodore Perry Bailey of Chico County, State of Arkansas, age 32, and Ann Bowman of Chico County, State of Arkansas, age 20 years. Both parties have lived together as husband and wife since January 1863, according to the former conventions and customs of said church, and did then and there declare them to be husband and wife, given under my hand this 22nd day of May, 1866. So that's the first. The second one is the same exact day. Frances Bailey, who I indicated on the 1857 in inventory, she marries the same man from that 1857 inventory that says it infers it's her husband. She marries him and their name becomes Lynn. How he takes the name Lynn, I'll never know, but she goes from Frances Bailey to Frances Lynn. And it was interesting to note that Frances had the same age and got married the same day as Commodore, and I wondered if they are twins, because twins is very, very popular on our side of the family. So we that comes from the Commodore lineage, and that, you know, it seems to be that might be the first indication of twins when we look at the way that they are married the exact same day, and they're married by the exact same people, and so on. The next is July 6th, just a couple of months later, Sanford Bowman, who is Ann Bowman's father, marries a woman named Nancy Giles. And both of those names are on the 1857 inventory. So that was also very interesting. Sanford is the father of Commodore's wife, Anne, which makes Sanford and the rest of us who are related through me, the third great-grandfather on Anne's side. And then we have the marriage certificate between Isaac G. Bailey and Winnie White. And that marriage certificate is dated March 19th, 1870. So the Isaac G. Bailey side, this is your first documented marriage certificate through that line. Very fascinating appearances prior to the 1870 census. And then we next have, in 1869, it was still Chico County, they had a freedmen's property tax list, and the arrow points to the first name under Franklin Township, because they used to have townships. They might still have townships, but at any rate, James Bailey is the first name, and C.P. Bailey, which is how you often saw Commodore Perry Bailey, is the second name under the freedmen list. What's interesting to note is the name under them, which is Barry Boyd and Wash Boyd. They both are on the 1857 inventory for James John R. Campbell. So that was just interesting. And there's also a George and a William. So I'm going to assume that all of these people are from that 1857 list. I just can't completely verify it. So again, another mention of our ancestors' name prior to the 1870 census. From 1874 to 1885, a Bailey male served in leadership in Chico County, appointed as constable judge electors for Chico County. This was pretty significant, that starting in 1874, well, I only showed 1876, but it starts in 1874. In 1876, we have Commodore Bailey is appointed as a judge for the election. And what were their responsibilities? They were to make sure that the election was done just like a poll, leader today. They were in charge. They were to make sure the elections were done properly. So that says that our ancestors immediately got involved in the political system. They immediately got invested, and that person had to know how to read. And so, it's very likely that they knew how to read before they were, freed, and quite frankly. And then in I'm sorry, I'm going again, you hit the mouse. In 1879, Isaac G. Bailey is listed as a judge. And the way they described it is in the matter of judges and clerks of the election. And this was dated September 2nd, 1879. And it says Isaac Bailey, judge there. And his older brother, Commodore, precedes him in that role. And there were others, I just didn't put them all on here. And then, of course, many of you already know that in 1885, Isaac G. Bailey served in the Arkansas House of Representatives. And get my thing here. Here we go. And after the Civil War, Arkansas adopted a new constitution in 1868, and its provisions included the right to vote and hold public office for Black males. However, after 1885, there would not be a Black man serving in Arkansas politics until the 1970s. Now the 1870 federal census. Now, of course, as I've already been saying, this is where you get the first official census recording of formerly enslaved individuals, and it would list the person's age and place of birth. I want to also mention that every 10 years, the census changes the structure, so you don't always capture the same exact information, which is a bit of a bummer, which I had to discover that, but it is what it is. So the first thing I want to show, and this is from my last presentation, but I thought it was worth repeating, was on this 1870 census in Chico County, Franklin Township, we see Jenny Bailey, and she's 64, and she's from Virginia. So that's a way that you can connecting those dots by identifying where someone indicates they are from. And if they are on more than one census, is that consistent? Although that isn't necessarily fail-safe. So that's where we have Big Jenny. But by then, Big Perry is already passed away. In one of the materials that great cousin Chris shared with me, it was indicated that he passed away in 1861. How they had that information, it was through, I cannot recall the person's name, but it was passed down through the family because he was also a minister. He was viewed as a minister type person, Big Perry was. And then the next is just really up the road, not even too many houses away. We have Jim Bailey on the 1870 census, Commodore Bailey living right next door on the 1870 census, and Isaac Bailey right next door. So these three brothers were all living right next to each other. And when we look at place of birth for Jim Bailey, it says Virginia. We look at place of birth for Commodore, it says Virginia. Place of birth for Isaac is Arkansas. That also tracks with the 1857 inventory because Isaac was on there as 10 years old. He was born in Arkansas. Now here we get to the 1870 census across the river in Mississippi. The first name says Winston Bailey. And on the 1857 inventory, under Big Perry and Big Jenny, Winston was 8 years old. He was the youngest. And this Winston says he's born in Arkansas. And his wife is Ophelia, who was also from Mississippi. This second highlighted yellow name, Sarah, is from the 1857 inventory. The next highlighted name is Sanford Bowman, who we already saw him on the 1857 inventory. We saw him getting married in 1866 to Nancy. The second name is Nancy. There's his wife. Now, what's interesting is they're both from Virginia. Sanford and Nancy are from Virginia. That means they took the trip from Virginia to Arkansas with the Campbells. The next name is Frances, and now it's Lynn, but this would have been Frances Bailey. And she too indicates she's from Virginia. She took that trip with the Campbells, with her relatives. And then her children are born in Arkansas. Her husband, Tom, it appears by this time is deceased because her husband was 47 and she was 32 when they got married. My assumption is that he's deceased. I couldn't find him anywhere, so I'm going to assume he was deceased. Other documents that help connect the dots. In 1903, there was what's called a Dawes Indian application put forth. And the Dawes Indian application was where a person could submit an application trying to prove that they had Indian ancestry. So this particular application was submitted by the son, who also happened to be named Isaac, of Joel Winston and his wife Ophelia. And this son, Isaac, was saying that he was 1/4 Choctaw Indian. And so there's a whole application, which I just didn't put all of that in here, but unfortunately it was rejected. But in the application, Isaac, the son of Joel and Ophelia, is saying his grandparents are Virginia and Perry Bailey. He lists their, their names are printed in the application. So again, that connects all those dots together. So it's unarguable that the Joel Winston on the 1870 census is the son of Virginia and Big Perry and so on and so forth. And what I found interesting about Joel Winston Bailey as the baby son, he named all of his children after his brothers. So he had an Isaac, he had a Commodore, and he had a James. It's fascinating. Now, does that prove that we don't have any Choctaw or any other Indian? It doesn't prove it. It just says that this application was rejected. I don't know. Well, I can say in my DNA, I found no presence of any Indian, but this is another document that connected the dots. In 1903, Isaac G. Bailey took a train from Pine Bluff, traveling to a Baptist convention in Philadelphia. And during the train ride at each city stop, he writes a message in a letter to his wife. The cities that he notes are Harpers Ferry, Virginia, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and Philadelphia. This is page 1 of the letter, but what I want to share with you all is on page 2. At the bottom, I've highlighted this section where he's in Baltimore, and then I transcribed it for you. And in that section of the letter to his wife, Isaac G. Bailey says, "This is my father and grandfather's old home. It is very," and then he goes over to page 3, "it is very pretty city, and black and white people are getting along so well together." Now, this is 1903. This passage tells us that Isaac G. Bailey's father, Perry Bailey, is from Maryland. And Perry Bailey's father, name unknown, is also from Maryland. So that for me says that I have a 4th great grandfather who is from Maryland. We just don't know his name, according to this 1903 letter from Isaac G. Bailey. Carol, I'm not sure if Carol is still with us. Carol Arterberry. Carol, so when I looked at something like this, where Isaac G. Bailey is being so intentional to document something that was significant, it again made me wonder, why would he never mention Frederick Douglass? It just seemed improbable that he was so keyed in, you see, and how I mean, there's so many letters. I've read them all. And I thought, again, it just doesn't seem factual there,
I don't know. I don't even know how you could have read that letter. It looks strong now, but it certainly wasn't when it was in my hands.
Yeah, it's you just gotta, I did a lot of editing, quite honestly,
Oh,
writing
okay.
it,
Yeah.
just making it all much easier to read.
Oh my gosh. God bless you, girl.
Thanks.
God bless you.
So again, that's another dot connector when you're trying to make sure that everything that seems that you're associating it all lines up and tracks. I'm almost at the end. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is the clergy of Desha County, Arkansas. And in the middle there is Isaac G. Bailey. Unfortunately, we don't have any known photos of Commodore Perry Bailey, who would have been the father of Jerry Bailey. And Jerry Bailey was the father of Ethel Bailey on my line. But we do have the picture of Commodore's brother, Isaac. And we also see in this picture, Isaac G. Bailey Jr. That was Isaac G. Bailey's son in that picture when he was young. And this is around 1907. Every other person in this photo were ministers in Desha County in 1907. I actually know all of their names. I just didn't clutter up the picture with putting everybody's name on here. It's one of my favorite pictures. When I first found this picture, I had made up my own story that one of these was Commodore, but when I was able to do more research, when I went back to Emory and I actually found the Southeastern Baptist Convention book with all these people's pictures in it and their name, I had to let go of that story, Carol. I had to let go of that. I was going to make it folklore, hun. I was going to say yes. but I was wrong.
Mhm. That's so funny.
And the Virginia plantation today. In 2022, my sister and I visited the actual plantation land in Albemarle, Virginia, where our ancestors, Perry Bailey, Jenny Bailey Jr., Francis, James, and Commodore Bailey were formerly enslaved, along with other formerly enslaved people by the Campbells that weren't our relatives. This is a aerial topography view of the land today. The yellow, I just put that on there so you could see the vastness of the 1,400 acres in Virginia. And this little horseshoe shape is the Rivanna River. And I just wanted to point out, as my sister said, it kind of mirrors that kind of horseshoe shape of the Mississippi River for the land in Arkansas City and down in Arkansas. So this is a short video of my sister and I approaching the land in our car, our renter car. The current owner is not associated with the Campbells at all. And the current owner was so kind to welcome my sister and I and took us on a tour of the land. These are some more aerial images of the land today. Excuse me, the land today. And again, this would have been on both sides of this river was the Campbell plantation where our ancestors would have worked.
How much does the present owner own of this land?
They only own the, I'll go back. They only own the side, hold on, let me go back. They only own the side where it says Snow Hill Airport, Snow Hill Lane, but they own that side. The other side, I'll give you, at the end, I'll give you a really interesting story about the other side. Really quite fascinating. I just found that out recently. Another couple of shots of, now I don't know whose house that is up there. I don't know anything about that house. I just know these are aerial shots of, you know, the land today. The legacy continues. I named my house Bailey's Cottage in honoring our ancestors because where I live is 30 miles away from Baltimore, which is where Isaac G. Bailey said that Perry was from and Perry's father. And so I said I wanted to claim, you know, ancestral ownership of a plot of land. And so my home is named Bailey's Cottage. It's how everybody refers to it. Questions? Now, before I take any more questions, I'll tell you about that other piece of land on the other side Carol just asked about. So the land on the other side in 1836 was purchased by a white man, an enslaver named Garland. Garland had a Black enslaved mistress and had children with her, 12. And when he died, he willed all of the land to his Black mistress and all of her children. So that land on the other side became 600 acres of land owned by a Black family up until just shortly, not too shortly a time ago, maybe, I don't know, maybe 20 years, but they still own about 40 acres of it. But it became a huge sort of scandal in Virginia that this white enslaver left all of his assets to his Black mistress and all of his children by her. So that's the end of my presentation. Any questions or either comments or, you know, anything that you feel led to say? This has become such a labor of love for me. I'm going to take it off of I'm going to stop share. It's become such a labor of love for me. And I have so much information in my mind. And I remember Juanita saying there were two other family members, I think Janice and Linda, who are also interested. And I said, man, I hope that maybe they won't, you know, they'll feel that we can come together because I would love to maybe do like some type of a book or something because I have all this information and I still hold it all in my head, but I don't want it to just be there. I want it to be in a form that every other person could, you know, have their own copy. And is that Aunt Julia? Look at you sneaking in there. Hold on. Aunt Julia is the oldest surviving Bailey member on this call. You got to say something.
Oh, I was just amazed about all you guys.
Can you give us your age?
How old I am?
Yes.
Oh.
We're honoring you. You're the
I am a whole 81 years old.
Yes, this is our oldest on this call.
And
our second oldest, I think, alive in the family.
I was just interested in, the
So
lady
you were
that.
born in Arkansas, right?
I was born in Dumas, Arkansas, and they left Arkansas in 1943. I was 3 months old when they left Dumas. And God, I didn't know I had so many relatives. Good grief. This is pretty cool. The lady that lives in Omaha in
Juanita.
1977. Who was that?
Juanita,
Juanita, did you know my mom?
you're on mute, Juanita.
Oops.
Did
I'll try to unmute her.
did you know my mother?
So Juanita was born in Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Okay.
And she
Yes.
was born in what, 1949?
Right, 1949.
So
Okay.
Grandma
and
Ethel was gone, you know.
yeah, but I mean, so far as in Omaha, she lived
They
in
never
Omaha?
know. She never even knew that we were in Omaha.
No.
Really?
Julia.
Didn't know at
Never
all.
even knew.
That is crazy. You know that?
Not until
So
yesterday.
did you know Aunt Ida and Lily? Did you know any of them?
Didn't know any
Asley?
of them.
Did you know Tot?
Nope. She
No?
wouldn't have known any of them.
No.
Where did you live in Omaha? What street?
On Taylor.
Where is
I'm in,
Taylor?
I'm in North Omaha.
Yeah.
North Omaha, because we were raised on Charles Street.
That's not far.
Yeah, in Charles Street. And I went to Central High School.
Yeah, well, Juanita only got to Omaha, Julia, in 30 or so years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in
Okay.
1988.
Yeah, she only came
Okay.
there to, well, not only, but work brought her to Omaha. She wasn't
Okay.
born there and she didn't kind of grow up there.
Oh, okay. All right. Because I was trying to figure out how was she there and we didn't know about it.
Right. She came later, but still, even in
Yeah.
the 80s, we were,
Yeah.
we were still there.
Yeah, because I left in 65. I
Right.
got married in 65, and shortly thereafter I left and we moved to Bar Harbor, Maine. My husband and we went to Bar Harbor, Maine. I've lived in so many places. Okay. I lived in Bar Harbor, Maine, Stevensport, Wisconsin. Where else have I gone?
Colorado.
Colorado, Denver, Colorado. Well, it's nice to meet all you guys.
Thank
Okay.
you so much, Aunt Julia.
Now who is that is from Pine Bluff?
So that's Juanita.
Now who I don't see her. Who is she? What's her last name?
Elliot.
Oh,
Tim, actually, I'm sorry, on the screen it says Tim. I think, is that your son?
no.
No,
Oh,
I'm
okay,
talking
you
about
talking-
Juanita.
Okay.
Okay, can you guys unmute? We can't hear you.
He's trying.
Great. So that's your son, Tim?
Yes.
Hi, cousin Tim.
The new
So that's Juanita Elliott was born in Pine Bluff, cousin Lois.
Oh, okay. I was trying to see did she know my dad's sister, Lily, what's on Lily's last name? I can't even remember. She stayed off Ohio. Hart, Lily Hart. There's my dad's, Minnie Bailey. That was his sister. I
Didn't
can't
know
hear
Lily
them.
Hart. Oh, you're back on mute.
Okay. So
Did you know Lily Bailey Hart?
no, I didn't.
Oh, okay. We used
Wow,
to
it's
come to Pine Bluff all the time, and I know we have a lot of relatives still there.
In
in
Pine
Pine
Bluff.
Bluff.
Yeah.
Now Betty is still in Pine Bluff.
Now
Okay.
who is Betty?
Betty Sue is she's my next oldest sister. She's
Now what's her
Number-
last name?
Johnson.
Johnson.
Betty Sue
It's
Johnson.
crazy how I can remember all this.
Okay. If I ever run into somebody, I'm always running into people, so I ran into a couple of people that said we were related. We were at a place, so didn't really get a chance to talk. We were sitting side by side, but that's been a couple of years ago.
So Lois, you came in a little late and everyone else introduced themselves and talked about who their Bailey line was. Could you please introduce us? Tell your name, where you are, where you were born, and which Bailey ancestor you connected.
My name is Lois Ann Bailey Coleman. Benny Bailey was my father, and Jerry Bailey was my grandfather. And I think Commodore.
Commodore was, yes,
My
military.
yeah, my great grandfather.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep. So grandma, so Aunt Julia, Lois's father was Grandma Ethel's brother.
Yeah, I talked to her on the phone. I'm the
I
one that
thought
talked.
that was you.
Yes,
That's what I was
yes,
getting
Yeah,
ready to
I talked
ask.
to her on the
Yeah,
phone.
yeah,
Glad
yeah.
to see your face.
Yeah, because I talked to her and I mean I was just really surprised and excited how welcoming she was. The fact that
Yeah, I talk a little bit too much.
no, you don't. I talk too much too. Okay, sometimes. Okay.
Maybe that's a trait we all have.
It runs in the
Yeah, I
family.
do. I do. Okay, it's all right. It's all right.
Let
But
me
anyway.
do Arthaniel and then Victoria. Arthaniel, can you introduce yourself similarly?
Hello, y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let me throw myself up. I can. Give me a second. I'm trying to put my picture up.
Where you're born and which Bailey?
Hey.
Who are you?
Hey.
Who's your Bailey line through? Where you born?
My name is Arthaniel Bailey. My parents are Alfonso Bailey. His father is Dago Bailey.
And Dago's father is
Uncle Dago. Okay.
Yes.
And Dago's father is. Do you know who Dago's father is?
Jerry.
No, I don't.
Jerry.
No.
Jerry.
It's
Jerry. It's Jerry.
Okay.
Jerry.
And then
Yeah,
Jerry's
yeah. I
father is
live in
Commodore. So yes.
I live in Louisiana now.
Okay.
Yeah.
What part?
Where?
Yeah.
Where?
Shreveport.
Oh, okay. I live right outside of New Orleans.
Yes. That's a couple hours away. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, Victoria.
Is she gone?
She's right here.
Nope, I'm not gone, Auntie.
Okay.
So, hi, everybody.
Hi.
I am Victoria Finch. I am Lois' niece. I am her oldest niece. I was born in Michigan, but I was raised in Dumas, Arkansas. So I'm Benny Bailey's granddaughter, and and so forth and so forth. I just want to tell my aunt I really, really thank you and appreciate you, Auntie, for keeping up with everything and inviting us and keeping us together and getting us to learn this information, because I didn't have any knowledge of anything, but besides what my Aunt Lois has always tried to tell us and everything. So I really, really appreciate it. Kind of like at work, I do research, so I would like to reach out to you to try to do some stuff with you, because that's the field that I work in right now. At this moment, I do research. So I would like to, kind of like get that together and stuff. My mom was Lois' oldest sister.
And her name?
Benny Bailey.
Your mom's name was.
My mom was named Benny Jo
Benny
Bailey.
Jr.
She's named. Her complete name was after her dad.
Yes.
Oh wow.
Benny Jr.
Yeah.
So, okay, you have said nothing. I will get your information from Lois. Patricia, did you want to do your introduction?
Is that Tricia? Yeah.
She's over here. She's on her phone.
Oh, okay. And I just want to say before she gets in that Vicky, what she's meaning by thanking me is because I try to text and message everybody, everything, and encourage them to learn more. But we owe this all to you, Denise. Like I say, my late brother Troy and I, we did the DNA, and then we had the little family gathering here, and then Tracy, your first cousin, notified you. That's how we got this together. And I am so happy. I'm so proud. And I tell everybody about my family, and it's not to brag.
So
I'm almost crying now. It makes you feel so good, to know. It's not that we never thought that we wasn't anything. It's not not about so much material stuff, but the potential we have. And so much education, so many, just educated people and smart people. No, we may not have all the same things, but everybody might not have degrees, but I got some relatives that, young cousins, they may have not gone to college or, have a
Oh,
vocation, but they are smart kids,
absolutely.
Right.
I get mad because some of them don't want to, you know, we know college is not for everybody, we all
Absolutely.
told, but I want them to do better, I
Well,
want
yeah, do
you to know
well.
about your family and be proud, of your family, and so I talk about my family, not a lot, but I just tell her about y'all all the time, especially you, Denise. Honey,
Appreciate it.
Monica, you too. And I just
Thank
Patricia's
you.
they are
ready.
so I said, I'm so I said, we have this connection. Our kids are going to school. We don't know who can tell us
That's
what,
right.
guide us in the right direction. Even us that are older want to, maybe pursue something else,
That's right.
we have that connection. Everybody has something to offer.
Patricia,
Okay, I'm Patricia, and my dad is Alfonso, and I'm Dago, granddaughter, Jerry, great granddaughter.
And everybody keep calling Uncle Dago,
thank
Dago.
you.
His name
We
Warren.
have, is that Sylvia? Is that
Warner, his
Sylvia?
name is
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna go with Sylvia because she didn't introduce herself yet.
Hi, everybody. I came in late. My name is Sylvia Ellison. I was not born in the US. I was born in Egypt, actually. This is my sister Rebecca. I have another sister who is roaming around here. And I am so grateful to Denise. We found out through a very close mutual friend that we know each other through a very close mutual friend, but then also Denise reached out to us as well. And so I'm very, very grateful, trying to absorb all of this.
And your line is through James.
James, yes, James Bailey. And Carol is my first cousin. So her mother and my father were siblings. And I know Carol's been doing a lot of this research as well. And so
she was acknowledged earlier.
Oh, I let it go after I talked to Denise. And by the way, for those who don't know, my middle name is Denise.
Yeah.
So that was
Wow.
okay, she's family. But I let it go after I talked to Denise for the first time. She had already met, Sylvia, Rebecca, or talked to them previously. And I was just blown away. I said, as much as I did before AI, and it was all paper related. Ancestry got a little bit better, other sites got better. So I was in and out over the years. I think I started in the 80s. And after you just have the mind, Denise, to capture it, not only the passion, but to keep the details. It becomes like family. You hear the names and you finally associate, but you were so far beyond me. That's why I just packed up the box and sent it off.
She told me she was sending me all her research. I said, no.
No, I wasn't going to finish it. And there was nobody in our family who was going to continue. So I figured, let you go on it. In fact, I probably still have all the old notes from Uncle Ralph that you already have, but I'm thinking just sending all that as well, because who knows what you might be able to find.
I
Maybe
think one of the
nothing.
things I'm thinking of doing is seeing if Emory will accept some of the new research and additional materials. They may. Just as a sort of an extension, I have been invited to the Boston Museum, African American Museum of History, to do a commissioned piece on Sue Bailey Thurman, who was the daughter of Isaac G. Bailey.
Great.
And that will be either in October of this coming year or March of 2026. So that is going to, I'm going to make it, of course, it will center Sue Bailey, but I'm going to really also treat it as an honoring for our family and the Bailey lineage with the four brothers and then now the four sisters that I know of. So that's going to be
I'm wondering if, so because of how much everything's progressed with genealogy and the databases and all of that, what do you think makes our family uniquely different on any of the lines that come down from the Bailey line? or you think this is a story that's always been for every family
Oh, I think
if
that
they
it,
have the ability to find the information? It took
yeah,
me years. It definitely took you years. So,
I think it's common that there's such rich, dynamic,
mhm.
complex, storylines in the Black family lineage. I think it's common. I think it's been repressed, suppressed, dismissed,
Yeah, most definitely.
Mhm.
shoved to the side. I think it is much more common than we have been able to learn about and or
Right.
hear about. And we just, the history holders had been, give it short shrift and really very little regard. I think again, I spent quite a bit of time looking at families. If I found an interesting name, I'd go and do a little, just to kind of keep your skills up. If I hit a brick wall for our family, I'd go and do somebody else. And
Yeah.
I just couldn't tell you all the amazing, wild, just types of situations that it just changed my whole perspective on the depth and prowess of Black intellectual, creative capacity in the face of both hardship and oppression. I often say we are really a miracle people. We were
Yeah, we are.
we were not to be
Absolutely.
we were just, in the face of whatever, we are the masters of make a way out of no way.
Mhm.
It was just not
Mhm.
gonna happen. I mean, I have so many stories within our own family of, how they started the school and, started the churches that, they engaged in, and the land ownership that they had, in our family, 4, 5, and 600 acres of land. I mean, it was just astonishing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Denise, I
it's
found
common.
that to be one of the things that was really unique about our family is like right after emancipation, the brothers were buying land. Like,
Yeah,
what?
they were
Yeah.
buying
This
quite a
is
bit of land.
incredible, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
amazing.
Hey,
And
And
I,
for those Baileys who don't know about our side of the family, my grandfather was a lawyer
Mm.
in Oklahoma. I mean, all of the Jeffersons and all of our lineage
Well,
were
mm,
mostly
but
from Arkansas and
in the Emory
Mississippi.
papers, there's a couple of letters between Isaac G. Bailey and folks in Oklahoma. So I'm gonna go back
Mhm.
and see if maybe those names are actually, that line.
Right, right. It would be
Quite
funny if
likely.
the Campbells of the plantation were the soup Campbells.
No,
Just
I don't think so, because I actually researched them. My sister and I did a little bit of research on them
Yeah,
forward, and that wasn't the case. But
okay. That would
I'll
have
tell
been
you one
funny
thing,
though.
another little tidbit that I found interesting was, the assumption, and I had this assumption, I don't know about y'all, but that most enslaved people took the last name of their enslaver.
Yeah,
mhm.
Well,
yeah.
there are hardly any, or let's say there are very few Campbells in that immediate area right after in the
Mhm.
1870 census. There are hardly any Black Campbells. So almost everybody who was on that enslaved list, 1857 for the Campbell, none of them took the last name Campbell once they were freed. Because you know
Oh,
that many enslaved people had
Yeah,
created their own last name.
yeah.
Hey, Denise, I have two questions. About one of them is about the probate situation. So while that was what, 15, 20 years?
17 years total.
So during that time, they just continued operating as
Absolutely.
separate
No,
properties, and even
no.
though,
I'm sorry.
no, one property.
Charles W. Campbell, who was the only surviving son, basically was operating everything. He
Okay.
he just, he was one of the entities in the will. There was three people that, well, I don't want to get technical because it was more than three, but only three people were going to get the land and the enslaved. So Charles W. Campbell basically was just still running the plantation and receiving and reaping all the benefits. Where his brother, who had deceased in 1844, who was married, his wife, she was, when her husband died, she gets his property. And since 1844 to 1857, she was left out of, that sort of financial gain.
Oh,
So the
interesting.
brother Charles was trying to keep
Oh, he
everything,
was trying to
Rebecca.
keep everything. He kept it in it. Now, Charles was an attorney. Also, let me be clear. John R. Campbell was an attorney. Charles W. Campbell was an attorney. These
Yeah.
white jokers,
Mm.
They worked that system something awful.
Man,
Did they have to go back and
Minister Tom.
repay them?
No, they did not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I traced the whole, once I found the case, then I could trace the case because I could go back to the court indexes and see. They kept on doing continuances. And basically those are all his friends, you know, in charge of the courts, the judges, everybody. Those white men were all just friends, you know.
Like they are today.
Rebecca, you had a part two?
Second question is, when Isaac Bailey was writing those letters, and he's mentioned that this Baltimore is where my father and grandfather were from, I still have a question. I know we've talked about this before about the Baileys of
I don't know
Baltimore.
about the Bailey.
Sorry.
So again, I just think that because I did do some research, this is probably 2 years ago, where I was seeking to find other Baileys beyond the Frederick Douglass Bailey family. And I was able to find, I want to say roughly, and I didn't spend a ton of time on this, but I think I found about 10 other white male Baileys. And I found 4 or 5 Black male Baileys between I think it was maybe like 1790 and 1830 or something like that. And I made a document, actually it's in the Descendants of Bailey group, that just shows all those individuals' names, because I wanted to, for myself, point out that there wasn't only one Bailey line in Maryland, that there were multiple other potential Bailey. If that name is the name, then there were other white men who had enslaved people and they were last name Bailey. So I just put it for myself to do that piece of research so that I too wouldn't be only stuck on that one Bailey line.
Well, given all of the trees that we have, obviously in our family, we do have to make more of the connections, you know, from that line coming down from Isaac. And it seems like all those brothers, that's where everything sort of splits up. What is the possibility of how would it be to put part of your tree that's pertinent to our line in those older ancestral years? Is that something that I would have to do individually, put them in, or is there a way to transfer?
Ancestry? You mean in ancestry?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'd have to do some research to see. I'm sure that it's possible. I just have never done it. And with the way that they have the technology now, you probably can. I know I can share my tree, and I can give certain permissions to individuals. So it probably is. You're probably raising the question that they.
So I probably have to do it step by step.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that later.
Okay.
Because I was just thinking, well, I'm going to get rid of my ancestry. You know, Denise has done it all. Then I realized,
don't
do that.
Don't do that. Don't put no more pressure on me. I need other people to have this information.
No, when I gave you all that stuff, Denise, it was yours. Okay.
Rebecca, were you finished?
Yes, I'm done. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
One more thing. So
Any other object? Oh, Cousin Gene sent a text. Hold on. He said, as far as bottom boat travel goes, it is possible that canals were the mode by which much of that would have been possible. A series of loadings, unloadings, and reloadings might have been necessary to complete the journey. Thank you for that information, cousin. There's a whole website called James River, whatever the name, Beaumont, and it talks about that history, what you're mentioning. The James River was in Virginia, and so it was right near, Monica, where they would have taken the James River over to
At least we think,
Ohio, or one of them, to take this route.
To get to the Ohio,
To get to the Ohio.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a whole, and then that particular website, it does acknowledge how the Black men, formerly enslaved Black men, who really, really commandeered and led those canal travels, aren't given their just due. It was very heartwarming to see them, because nowadays they do, people can rent the boat and do trips, it's like an activity, an excursion. But in the history of that, they talked about that history. So it was good to see folks acknowledging, the contribution of formerly enslaved Black people where we just, we don't often get it. But, I'm a fan of just, take claim it. Don't wait for somebody to tell you, you claim it yourself. Juanita?
One last thing, Denise, there also,
Oh.
there's also Jefferson cousins, second cousins that we have here in DC. Also
Oh, okay.
related to James. So we've told them about you.
Oh, wonderful.
They share this recording, but there's a
Okay,
whole
yeah, once it's done, I'll send the link to everybody.
connected to us here too.
Maryland, actually. yeah.
Maryland, yeah. But
Anita?
start in DC, yeah.
I believe that the one thing that's really unique about our family is number one, we are survivors. And we come from really great individuals that had a thirst for knowledge. So that's what I think is really unique and different about our family. We have a thirst of wanting to know where we came from, and where our ancestors would let us know where they're guiding us to. Because it may seem as if we're just doing this journey, but in my heart, I believe that our ancestors are guiding every step of the way.
I agree. I often
too.
felt like sometimes when I would be feeling like, I can't find anything else, or I would just wake up and go, for some reason, say, go look for this. And I'd be like, huh?
And there it is.
Boom, I'd be off and I call my sister, you giving up. It would be so uncanny and just so remarkable, And I actually, Lois, you mentioned not everybody's gone to college. I'm a believer that every pathway of a person is so multiple, so multiple.
Yeah.
I teach college and I did graduate from college, but I push vocation, whatever, you see, whatever. I mean, I'm huge. I'm one of the biggest people talking about, I wish I had, I do interior design. I wish I had learned electric. I became an electrician, quite honestly.
Crazy, yeah.
I am not kidding. But I do want to say this about the sort of collegiate track, because I think it is something unique, I think, Carol, in that how many of our family members went to Howard University.
Yeah.
Starting with Otto on the James W. Bailey line. Yes, you all sent me the picture. Yes, he went to law school.
Oh,
Ollie.
Ollie, not Otto.
Ollie, I'm sorry. I saw Otto here. Ollie, my bad. Ollie.
He finished in 1902.
1902. So he was the first Bailey lineage family member to go to Howard University. He went to law school. The next was Isaac G. Bailey's son, Isaac G. Bailey Jr., who went to Howard and graduated in 1916. And then although Sue Bailey didn't go to Howard, she lived on the campus and she was married to Howard Thurman, who was the first dean of chapel at Howard. And they lived on the campus for 12 years. And she put together the Faculty Wives Club. And there's lots of articles and pictures of her there. Rebecca Howard. No, one of the Ellisons, Howard.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, Rebecca. Yes, I thought I remember it correctly.
Oh, here I said I'm like
Rebecca.
back on the record, like 1902.
Went to Howard.
Sorry.
I went to Howard. Monica, my sister, went to Howard. My son went to Howard. And there's some other family members as well. We have a very, very strong, for some, Howard was this destination. And I am gonna just let me pull up, if y'all have one more minute. I think this is something really, really cool.
Denise,
And I
before
wanna
you
share
do
this.
that though, so
Yes.
you were just talking about, how it was just uncanny. Sometimes you'll wake up and you kind of know what to go, where to go, what to look at. Can you just share with everybody what happened when we approached and got on the land in Arkansas City?
Oh, right. That was when we first, I had gone to Arkansas City by myself first. I was just lone little road, out here just doing this thing. And then I started finding things and I said, well, my sister, I said, can we go together? And so we got in a car. I went to Louisiana, met her. We got to rent a car and got in the car and we drove to Arkansas and we drove straight to the Mound Cemetery. We didn't even stop to go see Lois and none of them. We went straight to the Mound Cemetery. And it was a sunny, beautiful sunny day. And as we were approaching the Mound Cemetery, it starts to rain. but it was still this beautiful, gorgeous sun just spitting these raindrops. And it was as if, you see, from a symbolic perspective, the ancestors were weeping that
Yeah,
we were coming to reconnect, you
that's
know.
right.
And then then later we drove to Lois's, I think, first. And then we
Hmm.
said, we got to take everybody. And so the next day we all drove to visit the Mound Cemetery and to chat and to connect and everything. It was very powerful. So I did
Yeah.
want to share this with you on the screen. This is a picture to the right. It says I.G. Bailey, retiring business manager. This is from 1916. I.G. Bailey was the business manager for the Howard University student newspaper called the HU Journal. And this article is so powerful. It reads, the retiring business manager. The state of Arkansas has not sent a more promising son to Howard than Mr. I.G. Bailey, the retiring business manager of the Journal. Mr. Bailey is one among the few who can do a number of things well. Since being at Howard, his talents have been recognized. He has been chieftain of his class, president of the Alpha Phi Literary Society, athletic editor and business manager of the University Journal, and president of the 1916 Howard Year Book Board. He was a fiery cat.
He
Okay.
was.
We wish now to speak only of Mr. Bailey's journalistic work, for which he seems to be peculiarly fitted. As athletic editor, Mr. Bailey rendered his first service for the University Weekly. Under his administration, the athletic side of life here was given singular prominence. His style of reporting was different from what had gone before. He was the first of those serving in this capacity to accompany the teams on trips abroad. As a result, his articles were written from first-hand information. A new interest in athletics was aroused. There is little doubt, however, that the best service Mr. Bailey has rendered to the Journal has been in the capacity of business manager. When he was elected to this position, many wondered how one who seemed to be more editorially inclined could ever be successful as head of the managerial department of the Journal. Whether or not he has succeeded in this position can best be answered by his record. At the beginning of his term of office, he promised to add several hundred readers to the Journal subscription list. He kept his word to the extent of almost doubling the list. He has been fortunate in making every active alumnus of Howard a subscriber to the Journal. It is enough to say that under Mr. Bailey, the work of the business side of the Journal increased in such proportions that it was found necessary during the year to add 2 more assistants to the business staff in order to have a force large enough to do the work of this department. Mr. Bailey leaves the Journal in better position financially than it has ever been before. His work has been very thorough. We predict for him great success in his line of work as a life profession. Now, he graduates in 1916, but unfortunately he fell ill and passes away in 1928. He lived, and his art obituary was in the Crises magazine, which was the magazine of the NAACP at the time.
Where did he die?
In DC. He lived in DC and he stayed here after he graduated. He didn't go back to Arkansas.
Where is he buried, you know?
In Arkansas.
Okay.
In Spring, that grave, I keep saying, Logus, in Spring Hill Grove. We can't find this.
And you
It's an
say
old,
it's in
it's an
Southeast
old,
Arkansas?
yeah, but I think it's probably just in, no longer registered, cemetery. And so where I found that information was in Emory University. Great cousin Sue Bailey Thurman had written on the back of an envelope a picture and said I think it's Spring Hill Grove or Spring Grove Cemetery. And she put the names of everyone buried there, including her brother and her father. So her father, according to his own daughter, is not buried at the Mound Cemetery. He's buried at Spring Grove, whatever the name of that is. But nonetheless, there is a plaque at Mound Cemetery that great cousin Chris was able to have mounted there that indicates that I.G. Bailey was a member of the Arkansas State Legislature, and it is believed he's buried there. But again, when I found that document at Emory where great cousin Sue says her father is buried with everybody else at this cemetery that we can't find. So again, Carol, something being handed down, great cousin is true. And then I find this, that what we would call a primary resource, that's his daughter. It's him, her mom, her aunts. She has everybody on there and the dates that they're married.
Yeah, great. Wow.
So yeah, that kind of little folklore, I think it just gets a life of its own. And, we don't know and we think we'll never find. So we just go with it. So, but anyway, I thought that was a really cool piece of, kind of history that showed who this person was. And I'll say this, and I'll close on this. Well, I know where he got it from because great uncle Isaac G. Bailey ran a newspaper in Dermont called the Industrial News. And Isaac G. Bailey Jr. was the subscriber. He was the person who went out and got everybody to subscribe to his father's newspaper. So he took those skills from Arkansas and took them to Howard. Like, oh, I got you. I know how to do this. Listen, what you say, cousin Juanita? Oh, we industrious. We know how to do that.
We're absolutely that.
Yeah. So I really appreciate y'all for joining me live. I would have done this had nobody shown up. And then I'd have been sharing the link with everybody saying, watch it. Because I just believe in the power of this information as a connective tissue, as a rejoiner, you understand, as a reclamation, just having that power of the nuance of our history, because folks have tried so hard to keep it erased, so hard. That's because they understand how powerful it is. There would be no effort to erase it if they didn't understand that it was so powerful. So in any way you can, do your thing, review the material. Shoot, I'm always game. You got a question, call me up and say, oh, shoot, I know where that is, or I know where to point you to, or whatever. All things are so possible. And so I appreciate it.
Well, I think that, having ancestry, I mean, as far as I could, do my best to put the information into our own lines, so our own line can look up, our particular lineage, because we have our maternal side as well.
Yes.
And, I don't know how much my cousins have done with Aunt Lydia, with their mom, or any of that, and that I think that would be a struggle, actually, and a hard lineage to follow. But I think mainly just so we could have the pictures and just have our hands on
Victoria
this.
already raised her hand, and I'm going to tap into who cousin Juanita mentioned, because it's going to take a team. And I'm, over the next couple of years, I feel confident we can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Denise, we are just so proud of you. And I just love your enthusiasm. You have enough for all of us. And I said, oh my gosh, what else did she find?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I will say that I'm going to say I put a date together that we can go back to, because when I found that note of great uncle Isaac saying his father, who I know Perry, roughly 1798, between 1798 and 100. And then he said Perry's father. So I put 20 years onto that roughly to say we can go back to 1778. I'm going to put a confident on there. But we can go back to 1778. We have a notation that Perry's father was also from Maryland. So I said, about, let's say anywhere from 17 to 20 years, he was likely and had Perry that we know. We're going to go back to around 1778.
No, sorry, I don't need to see me with this address on.
Yeah, we're going to go back to about 1778. So somebody said we lay claim to 1778. We probably go back farther, but we're going to put our date at 1778.
1778. Wow.
Yeah, we lay claim to
all
the land.
Impossible thing to ever happen. There's so many Black families who, you lose a link here or there. I mean, we had on our maternal side, my grandmother, she would have one of her brothers, because we're from Louisiana, North Louisiana. And she had one of her brothers would come from the mountains and come visit them in Muskogee, Oklahoma. And there was no telephones, or they didn't do letters. He would just show up because of the season. And he would visit his sister and then go back off to the mountains. And it's just one year he just stopped coming. So they just assumed that he had died. So much of history is like that, that
Right.
people just drop off. It's hard to imagine with social media and everything to ever disconnect from anyone, you know.
True.
You can
True.
always find anyone, you know, all of our information is out there. No matter how much you try to keep it secret, it's just impossible. So you know where everyone is, you know, unless they had made great efforts to keep their name off the internet, but it's impossible.
That's a really good point. Cousin Juanita, did you want to say something?
I am like I'm agreeing that you have all this enthusiasm, and I'm excited too to for us to get down to the point where we can really pull all of our information. Everybody has something to offer.
Yes.
And you know, many times, you know, things come to us in dreams sometimes, and we don't know how it's going to work together, but I believe that we will be able to find the foundation of all of our purposes here on earth
Yeah.
to leave our mark for our family on this world, because at this point we don't know what impact it will have on others down the road, but we do know that we're moving towards that end to where we will be impactful for the world.
Thank
'Cause
you
we-
again. Thank you
yes.
so much, everybody. I'm gonna load this up again. This will be private, and like I did in the past ones, only a person who has a link can ever see it. It's not public. I don't do them to make them public. So once it's there, then I usually send a message and say, if you want the link, you have to text me, and then I'll send you the link. You know, but for you all, I already know. Most of y'all already texted me to get this. You know, call Keisha Bailey James. You didn't ever introduce yourself. Did you want to introduce yourself? Did you want to do your little intro? I didn't want to leave you out. I don't know if she's still with us. Not sure. Okay. All right. Well, I didn't want to leave somebody out. You know, I'm a teacher, so, you know, I teach on Zoom sometimes. So, you know, got my little Zoom etiquette. Hey, Keisha.
Hi.
Hi.
Keisha Bailey James. Alfonso Bailey is my father. Warner Bailey is my grandfather. Jerry Bailey is my great grandfather. Did I say that
I
right?
think I just found your Warner Bailey's where he's buried.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where is he buried?
It's let me see if I have it still on the, let me see, because usually I leave these things up for a long time. Where is Warner? It's a site called arkansasgravestones.org. And oh shoot, now my internet is going slow.
Where do you live, Keisha?
He's actually
I
in
live in Gould. I was born and raised in Dumas, but I now live in
I
Gould.
know I have it. Because I just found it not too long ago. It's I can I'm gonna give you my phone number and you send me a text and I'm gonna send it the link so you can see it.
Okay.
It's 202
Okay.
321 0779. And if you can get it from Lois or Patricia or Arthania or anybody has my phone number.
Okay.
And I'll send you the link and you can see it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much for doing your introduction. Y'all have a great rest of the day, and I hope you have an awesome new year. And feel free if you just want to, you know, shoot me a text or something. Arthania, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I got on late. I just want to ask a question. Whereas I don't know where everybody living. If there anybody living close in the Louisiana area, because a lot of time when I have downtime, I hit the road. So that would give me an opportunity to go visit some family members in the closed facility, because I don't have nobody here that I know of. So it would help me out if I had family close by.
Okay. Okay. Well, I know that I know
I
you
don't
said
know if
you
I'm
were
the
a couple hours
I
away
don't know
from-
if I'm the closest, but I'm right outside of New Orleans, Arthania. That's kind of, what is it, 4.5 hour drive, 4 hours.
That ain't nothing. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm here.
And you're in the Descendants of Bailey group in Facebook, right?
Yes.
Yes. So you guys can definitely
Okay, perfect.
And anybody
Okay, I
who's
can
not
connect with
in
you
that
there.
group, I
Okay.
will figure out how to
Okay.
send that link to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. When I go,
I have a quick question. Just will you
Yeah.
update us when you if you find out more information and just keep us informed?
Absolutely. I don't want to be a pest, you know, because
Okay, no, I love it.
it depends on, you know, because I'll find little things that somebody might think it's a big thing, but like kind of sort of comparatively, like even when I found that they were, um, election judges, I was like, dang, that's just so amazing,
Yeah, that is.
But in sort of a
Yeah.
grander scheme, it depends on how much you want to know, because I'll just start sleuthing and come across other little, great little nuggets. And let me say this last to close. Hold on real quick. The AI feature on at Family Search is in beta. So it's not even fully launched. So it is, Cousin Stephanie, it is likely that as they really finish building that tool out, there may be even more things. So the technology also, I have to, kind of wait that out to see as it matures. But who said, hey, Denise? Somebody said, hey, Denise.
I did.
Okay,
I have a question. I want to know, Uncle Bennett would always say that our family come from Louisiana. Do you have anything?
Okay, so far, my grandma Ethel would say similar that, but so far I have seen zero indication of that. But here's the thing. There is or was Louisiana, Arkansas. There was a Louisiana, I think it was a township. So once I found it, I thought, oh, it might really be that they were referring to Louisiana, the township, not Louisiana.
I think it was Louisiana. Because I had heard my cousin Jerry would talk about him and Uncle Benny has went to Louisiana before, and I think they supposed to been going or something.
It might be, but I haven't found anything to verify it. I haven't found anything to verify it, but it could be because Commodore Jerry Perry was the oldest. Jerry, none of those children could I find had moved out of Arkansas. Quite honestly, everybody stayed in Arkansas. Now maybe they did some trips, but I couldn't find any relative that was from Louisiana.
Patricia, it's interesting you say that. I live right outside of New Orleans, and I moved here in 1991. And I'm an engineer, and I'll start working in one of these chemical plants. And one of the first things that somebody told me, Patricia, was, you look just like the Baileys. And there's some Baileys in a small town, named Edgard, which oddly enough, Patricia, this is where my husband is from, but he's not a Bailey. But so it's fascinating that that story has carried on through the family, because I was told that when I was 24 years old, when I first moved here. They say you look just like the Baileys in Edgard.
It could be. I haven't found anything yet, but doesn't mean it's not out there.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to add something to that. So I live in Michigan. I live in Detroit. There was a family reunion this year at one of our biggest state parks by a Bailey, Hertz, and I forgot the other last name here in Michigan. Very huge family reunion at this state park. Me and my sister, we're gonna be nosy campers. So we went. And what I did find, I do keep in touch with one of the people that I met there, that I intentionally went. And her name is Sonia Bailey. She's married to a Bailey from Louisiana. And I just like, wow, I don't know if, they could be any kin to us, but just by being there alone, I would say no, we weren't kin to each other and everything. But I do keep in touch with the young lady, like I said, because she's married to a male Bailey from Louisiana. And she works in substance abuse. She's like a substance abuse counselor. So we kind of run into each other quite often. And I always heard, when my granddad, Benny Bailey, always talked about Louisiana. I even remember him talking about a story about taking my grandmother down to Louisiana and stuff.
Well, that's some research. I mean, to try to pin it together in terms of someone, because Benny's father was Jerry. To my knowledge, Jerry Bailey was born in 1865, literally the year of emancipation, and or the final, year, and that he was born in Arkansas. And so his father was Commodore, who we already just went through. Commodore was definitely born enslaved in Arkansas, or excuse me, born in Virginia, transported to Arkansas. So through Benny, with Benny's father being Jerry, not unless it's on the maternal side, but then the maternal side would have been Macy Bailey. That would have been that would have been Jerry's wife. Macy Bailey's family, as far as I can tell, was from Alabama, because I've done a little bit of that line. But it's no telling.
But Jerry, Lois Ann and Jerry, probably they know the area that we are supposed to be from.
Well, then, if they could email me that information. I'm willing to do some research to see if I can pin it down. And it's like I said, it's so much now with the technology. It's way different, Carol, than back when you started. You can really cut through a lot quicker. Get to try to get stuff into a more factual realm. I'm not ever going to say no, because really anything is possible. Rebecca?
Sylvia.
Oh, Sylvia.
So quick question, and you might have gone over this and dispelled the myth already. And Carol, I don't know if you heard this, but about the Trail of Tears.
Oh yeah, that's an absolute no. Never happened.
Okay.
Never happened.
Never happened.
Why? Tell me why.
Because in 1835, as I was reading from the Goodspeed biographies of all these people from all the counties in Arkansas, it tells us that Oscar Bowles in 1835 on a flatboat brought John R. Campbell's enslaved people to Arkansas.
Okay, we're thinking of the other side, our maternal side of our family coming from
okay.
Louisiana. So
so then I don't know that line. I don't know that.
Yeah,
line.
yeah.
But on the Bailey line, then no, that part never happened.
Okay.
Yeah, gotcha. If you ever come to Arkansas again, let me know. I'll meet you up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right,
So
absolutely.
please let me know. The minute you know you're ever coming back, just let me know and I'll drive to Arkansas.
Yeah.
So where do you live, Carol?
I live in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, Dallas. Oh, okay. Wow.
I followed my kids and grandkids. Never thought I would ever come to the South. And oddly enough, my daughter and I actually like it here. We never thought in a million years we would, but we really like it here. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So I'm going to give a little context. So Sylvia was asking, there's let me do two more things real quick. So Sue Bailey Thurman, her husband was Howard Thurman, a great theologian, religious practitioner. He taught at Boston University for many, many years. 1996, Boston University produced a kind of a small little pamphlet about Sue Bailey Thurman and her history and her ancestors. Unfortunately, in that pamphlet, she recounts a story that I'm almost 100% certain she got from cousin Christabel Eatman, that that Virginia Bailey was a full-blooded Indian, came in the Trail of Tears. Well, what I just shared today completely factually destroys it, just obliterates that information as being inaccurate. Because those two things could not be true at the same time. She could not also have been enslaved by John R. Campbell, who clearly we see the paper documentation of how he managed his plantation and his enslaved people. They were never out of his sight. There was no time for her to get away from him, be an Indian in the Trail of Tears, and then go back and be enslaved by John R. Campbell and show up on 1854 and 1857 in probate inventory. It simply is no way for both of those things to be true. So in that pamphlet from 1996, it is now inaccurate because we have the factual, verifiable documentation to say how she and the others came from Virginia to.
It is interesting doing the whole DNA, and I'm surprised we haven't connected up. It's going.
Yeah, but I guess the trace is so small at this point, or I
Yeah.
mean, listen, I think I have about 3,000 distant cousins and ancestors.
Yes,
We
exactly.
might be in there, we just never looked 'cause
Yeah,
it's so
I haven't
many.
looked, you know,
It's
and
so
it's
many.
always younger people that are, because the older
Right.
people aren't necessarily getting the DNA.
That's
That's
true, that's true.
unfortunate, you know.
And also Lois, to my knowledge, Lois, myself, nor my aunt, Julia, nobody had any trace of Indian ancestry.
Yeah,
No, none.
I didn't either, or very
So that
smidgen.
also,
Me either.
Yeah,
Monica, yeah, I
smidgen.
forgot. Monica, no, that
Mhm.
points that it's quite unlikely that out
Yeah.
of being Aunt Julia is the oldest, she'd be the one who might show some because she's closer to that, you know, but she didn't show any. Stephanie?
So we have it slightly, very, but it's just a smidgen, and that's also with,
Just smidgen, yeah.
also with Dad Carol.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, so that might be through your paternal line. I know because now Ancestry will split up maternal and paternal, and you can kind of like pin it down.
Well,
But
my uncle, Sylvia's father, he had his done years ago, and I had mine done.
okay,
And it's
do you
pretty
have
much
it either?
coming up as a small smidgen. And
Oh,
here we thought all this time, you
she was
know, the
full blood.
Choctaw.
Yeah,
Huh?
Choctaw.
Yeah, but it's just
yeah.
Another
wasn't
piece of
very present.
folklore. And
Yeah.
again, if you ever watch Finding Your Roots with what's his name, Henry Gates, he
Yeah.
often says that he can't count the times that people are convinced, Black people,
Yeah.
that they have, you know, Indian ancestry, and they you know, Native American rather ancestry, and they
Yeah.
don't. I think another piece of folklore. I think it just kind of gets glommed
Yeah.
onto.
Well, it gives importance, especially to Blacks, to be associated. I mean, it's just like somebody say, yes, I was once in my past life Nefertiti in Egypt. Okay, you know.
Oh gosh, I'm gonna say this, y'all. I have enjoyed meeting every single person that I met. I mean, every one of y'all. I just, you know, yes. Oh, Stephanie, Julia.
Mom always talked about her mother, and she always described her mother's appearance, and that was, she said her mom was part Cherokee, and she said she had this long flowing hair and the whole 9 yards, and she came out with one story, which I never understood. She said that somebody who, I think it was somebody she knew or whoever, would come and comb her mother's hair. And she said that her mom actually, they used to burn their hair. They didn't just throw their hair in the
Yeah,
trash.
they used to
They
burn.
would burn their hair. And she said that there was an old hollow tree. She said they would put her hair in there, okay? And that she was a Cherokee, a half Cherokee Indian.
She
you
could
know?
very well have been. Macy,
so-
Macy, again, her father was Barry Brown, so that's now
Yeah.
on my grandmother's maternal line. Macy's father was Barry Brown, and I think she had 3 siblings. So I've done some research on that, the maternal side. Nobody on here would be related to them besides me and Monica and Jean, but nobody else, because that's our grandmother's maternal side. But yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
All right, good people. I'm gonna tap out. I'm gonna go get
Alright.
something to eat. It's so wonderful to meet everybody.
Thank
And I
you.
can't wait to meet
Thank
you in person.
you.
Nice to meet everybody.
Nice to
Carol.
meet you. Nice meeting you all.
New
Thank
Year.
you.
Yeah.
Have
All
a
right.
great rest
Happy
of the
New
day
Year.
and Happy New Year.
Yes,
All right, bye.
See you
Stay
guys.
on, cousins. Sylvia,
Bye.
Rebecca, stay
Love
on.
you, Carol. Okay.
Love-
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye, bye, Brett.
Bye.
Hey, kids. Hey.
Goodbye.
That's Guy. Hey. Bye.